Alright, so in the previous lesson, we finished doing our first level of shadow here. Now, if I come over here and say hide some layers, let's go ahead and hide that background and hide the color layer, you can see here kind of what we're left with. If I hide even the refined line work, what we've essentially done is erase away where the light is going to be hitting our character. Now, obviously it looks a little strange without the line work, but you can see here that we've started mapping out how the light is going to lay down on top of our character. Now, what I'm going to go ahead and do at this point is I'm going to go ahead and create another level of shadow, maybe even a darker level. So I tell you what, let's go ahead and select our shadows 1 layer and our hue saturation adjustment layer, and I'm going to just make a copy of those by holding down Alt and dragging both of those up just like so. And you can see here that we've essentially laid an exact copy of that down on top of the earlier one. Now, obviously we don't want our darker shadows to be in the exact same spot. So what I'd like to go ahead and do is erase away some of those shadows. So, obviously every area where we applied shadow isn't going to need this darker shadow. So let's go ahead and take away this shadow from our Shadow 1 Copies layer, just simply by erasing away some of the areas we know do not need it. So I want to come in here maybe in his eye socket and erase away most of the shadow there. And let's come in here and erase away maybe a layer there, and a layer there. And I tell you what, let's come over here and maybe erase away just a little bit right here. And let's come in and clean up this area right here that's almost facing our light source, so that's not going to get that darker shadow. So we're going to come in basically and add another level of shadow to these areas where we've already added shadow, just simply by erasing away a little bit. So I'm going to come in here and erase away a good portion of that next shadow on top of here. But let's come over here and maybe erase away just a little bit more here. So you can see here that basically what we're doing is creating another level of shadow. And you know, we could come over and apply this new level of shadow in several areas. Now, we could come over here and maybe hit this small little highlight on the opposite side of his face. It's really the only thing on the opposite side of his face that's picking up any of the light that's coming in. But let's come in here also and erase away kind of some of this shadow, maybe where his suit is being hit. Maybe we could come in here and erase away this thin little shadow right here. Essentially what we're doing is simulating a gradient by creating another level of shadow here. So I'm going to come in and again erase away some of this shadow in here, creating almost a two-level shadow, or a two-step shadow. And we'll come in and erase some here. And let's come in and erase some back in here as well. Maybe we got this entire opposite lapel that's, you know, it's not being hit by this second shadow. Sort of like that. And you know, the beautiful thing about this is we can always go in and paint away anything we're erasing right now. Or we can actually paint it right back in if we decide we indeed needed a shadow in that specific spot. So I may come in and erase away that shadow right along here, but maybe we actually leave it underneath. And maybe we come in and erase away on the top of this shadow, but the shadow's a little darker underneath, away from the light source. And you know, we could come in and erase away that shadow here on these subtle little wrinkle shadows that we've created. I don't think those are going to need it. And I tell you what, we can start to come in here and form the interior of this sleeve right here based on this new shadow. So I'm going to kind of come in here and just shave that shadow back. Maybe even picking up a little bit of it over here. And let's just kind of mimic these shapes right here. Kind of come in here, do a little bit of erasing there. And let's kind of come in and erase a little bit here. Just kind of creating this darker shadow on the interior, on the inside of his arm. So we can come in here and do the exact same thing up here. And I'll tell you what, we can even do that under here, kind of where his neck is a little bit exposed. Now we're starting to get into the area where it would probably be the darkest. So I'm going to be really careful about how much I erase away on this interior area right here. And let's erase away some right there. Now we've got some up here around the lower part of his eye that we probably should clean up. I don't think we're going to need that. Let's undo that a few times and let's try that again. Maybe we could actually keep a little bit of it right there in the very corner of his eye. Kind of like we did up here. And maybe we can peel some of that off here, off his eyebrows. Alright, looking really good at this point. So, you can see here how this second level of shadow can really deepen up some of the areas where we just didn't get dark enough. Now, obviously we're using the exact same color multiplied on top once again, and you know that may not be the best solution. We may actually want to change that color a little bit, but remember we actually copied this hue saturation layer as well. So let's go ahead and go back in here and take a look at this. Now, this is the colorized layer, the darker layer, so maybe we actually want to take that a little bit cooler. It's still going to be a warm shadow, but it's going to be a little cooler. So we're going to take it a little more towards a purple. Maybe it's a little darker. And, you know, in doing that, I'm coming in and seeing a couple spots where, you know, we've missed erasing that away, and we probably should. Like around his eye right here. His eye's probably not going to connect or collect that much shadow. And just kind of eyeballing and make sure there's no other little areas where we might want to come in and erase some of that away. Might come in here and erase just a couple little random spots away there. All right. I think I'm pretty happy with that. I think he's looking really nice. Now, just to add a few little final touches here, I'm not going to go into highlights real deep because we've really created a nice range of values just with our shadows. So there's just a couple of places I may come in and actually add a couple highlights. Let me go ahead and hit D to switch back to my standard black and white colors. I'm going to hit X to get the white on the foreground color, and we'll make a new layer here. Let's call this highlights. Now, like I said, I'm not going to do many highlights here. There's a couple little things that I might want to do, and that's probably to come in and really flush out his eyes with a couple of white highlights. Now, I'm going to come in here and let's see what my brush is going to do. How do I have that set? Yeah, we're going to do that at 100%. So, I tell you what, we can vary the opacity on our brush by coming over here and again turning on the transfer. And then now that switches that opacity back to pen pressure. So, I'm going to be able to come in here and add a couple little highlights right here on his eye, really make that eye pop out a little bit. Alright, so that looks pretty good. I may even come in and add a really subtle highlight on this eye over here. Let's see what that looks like. Alright, so he's looking really, really good. I think that character finished out pretty nicely. And, you know, that's about as far as I would probably take this character, even in color. So I know we still have a lot of characters here that we didn't color or didn't finish coloring in this course. And what I'll probably do is I'll probably go ahead and finish out the color on these other 4 characters, just so in the final files you have those colored too. And you can see kind of how I approach color on each one of those 4. Alright, so hopefully you've really enjoyed this series of lessons dedicated to creating creative characters based on an initial shape. Now, at this point, I'd like to just encourage you, feel free to, again, grab any of the 5 shapes that I started with, or feel free to grab your own shapes. Use the tools and techniques that we've talked about in this course, and see what kind of great characters you can come up with.